Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Career Corner. I am Amy Hanna, career coach for the Auburn City Schools, and I'm joined, as usual, by my partner, Ms. Marshall, work-based learning coordinator for Auburn High School. And today we have two wonderful guests from Auburn University, Chloe Moore and Daniel Lane, who are here to speak to us about some ACT tips because the ACT is coming up and we want everyone to do their best. And so, Chloe, I'm going to let you take it from here and then we'll
Perfect.
talk at the end.
Awesome. Hey guys, like Ms. Hannah said, my name is Chloe Moore. I am a sophomore at Auburn University, majoring in microbiology. The goal is pre-med. We'll see how that happens. But I have been obviously in your shoes at one point. I just want to share my experience and what I've learned through the ACT, as well as I discovered after taking the ACT that I wish I'd have known when I was preparing for it, like you guys are now. So I definitely want you guys to use this as a great resource to guide your studying and to introduce yourself to the questions of the ACT and how the ACT is formatted. I'm also joined today with my friend Daniel Lane. He is also a volunteer through this program. He is a senior at Auburn University as well. So we are both here. We've taken the ACT. It might have been a couple years, but we are ready to help you guys do your best so that you guys can do your best later on in life. So we will go ahead and go through a PowerPoint that I've made to discuss everything. So like I said, this is our Auburn ACT tutoring. We're just going to introduce you to the ACT and our services. So the general test format, obviously this is pre-COVID. I can't speak for, post-COVID things. Obviously there's going to be changes, but the test is taken at a certified high school, although it does not have to be your own. So for instance, I took it at another local high school that I didn't usually attend. You can also visit www.act.org for more information regarding any questions you might have, such as registration, testing sites, and dates. So on the test day, you'll arrive at your location with approved materials. You'll be informed what materials you are allowed and supposed to bring, but these are going to be things such as a calculator, snacks, pencil, and your ID. You're going to follow administrators' instructions, and they will walk you through everything else. So the test will take about 4 to 5 hours, depending on location and the proctor. There will be built-in breaks as well. So you are not allowed to bring smartphones, smartwatches, anything like that into the test. Those will be collected before the test begins, but you can have, a digital watch that doesn't beep or make any noises, as well as, an analog watch, right, with the clock face and everything. You can still have one of those as well. So the test consists of 4 sections and an additional writing section, which makes 5. But you'll have the English, math, reading, and science in that order. There will be a short break between the second and third sections. And after the final section, you might be given another random section with a few questions, but these are just for future ACT tests to test these types of questions on student populations. So these will not affect your score, and it's just a few questions just right at the very end. So don't worry about that section as well, in case you do get it.
So some general test tips. At the very start of the test, you will be guided through filling in the back of your Scantron where you will fill in your answers. You will fill that in with your personal information. There will be different fields for the personal information and for the actual answers. But it will, if it's like it was when I took it, then it will all be on the same form. The test proctor will hand out books with questions before each section, and we'll call out the total time for the test section and start the section, and also give a 5-minute warning before calling time to end the section. Use your watch to ration time for the individual passages or questions in each section, but make sure it doesn't make noise during the test. Sometimes there might be a clock in the room, but they do allow you to have a watch, so if you can bring one, I would recommend it. Don't read the instructions for any of the sections. It just wastes time. Obviously implicit in that is you should be familiar with the instructions for each section before you go in. Always answer all of the questions, and there is no penalty for answering questions incorrectly. You have a 25% chance of getting a question right if you guess. Of course, this is for the ACT. Some tests do that differently. Some tests do penalize you for incorrect answers. So do keep that in mind.
Yes, of course. And then for the English section itself, it's the first section of the test. You're going to have 75 questions in 45 minutes. I know that seems like a lot of questions in a very little amount of time, but these questions are short based on grammar, punctuation, usage, and sentence structure. You can also have up to 35 questions on things such as strategy, organization, and style, with the remaining 40 being on those grammar topics. So there's going to be 5 separate passages for the section, and there's going to be 13 to 16 questions per passage. These are going to be simple passages about random things from Native American history to cultural arts to humanities to social sciences and anything in between.
Some general tips for the English section. There is no difference in difficulty between questions or passages. There's difference in length much of the time, but no inherent difference in difficulty. Simpler is usually better for the answer choices, and 2 functionally identical answers are both wrong, because if they say the same thing, there's only one right answer. Obviously, they can't both be right. No change and omit the underlined portion are sometimes answer choices. No change is right more than a quarter of the time it appears. Omit the underlined portion can be the answer if the sentence does not lose meaning without the underlined portion. Strategies for reading. Read the entire paragraph, then go back and answer questions. This is what you want to do for main idea, purpose, and comprehension questions, because these require you to understand an entire paragraph, understand the structure of the composition, but answer questions as you read for simpler questions like grammar or punctuation.
So English questions, English concepts that will probably come up in these passages. Wordiness, restrictive and non-restrictive clauses such as comma usage and stuff. Again, independent clauses, so those are your full sentences that involves commas. Prepositions, modifiers, verb tenses, apostrophes and possessives, pronoun antecedent agreement, relative pronoun usage such as who versus when versus where, whom versus who, subject verb agreement. And I know that sounds like a lot of just your elementary school, middle school, high school English courses, and it is. This is a lot of review from those courses, so make sure to brush up on those topics. These are some resources to help practice. These links are provided to the side. Definitely make sure to look over these just so you're familiar with a lot of these general concepts.
Some strategies for the English section. Look at the context around the sentence when you're answering a question related to a sentence. Also, using a process of elimination improves the chances of picking the right answer when guessing. You can find exactly what the question is asking by looking at differences between answer choices, because sometimes, if you look at the question, it might be unclear what it means until you see the kinds of answers it gives you. And cross off answers that are wrong. I would say, this probably doesn't need to be said, but it's important, so do that on the booklet, not on the Scantron. But I think that's probably common knowledge. When guessing, because if you're answering every question, you will have to guess sometimes. For questions about a sentence's wording or punctuation, use the process of elimination, pick an answer, and move on. For questions about ideas in the passage as a whole, you may understand more after reading the whole passage, but if you still don't know, just guess and move on.
All right, so our math test. So this is 60 questions in 60 minutes. So obviously that's going to be one question per minute. The breakdown of the test, you're going to have 20 to 25% of your questions are going to be from pre-algebra classes. Then you're going to have 15 to 20% from elementary algebra, 15 to 20% again from intermediate algebra, 15 to 20% coordinate geometry, 20 to 25% plane geometry, 5 to 10% trigonometry, and a calculator is allowed. Please bring it. My sister forgot hers recently taking the ACT, and I can tell you it is possible for these questions to be solved without one, but it's not fun. She did not enjoy her ACT because of it, so please save yourself the stress and bring a calculator.
The math section gets harder as it goes along, so focus on the first 40 to 50 questions. I don't think questions are the grade. I don't think the grade weights questions based on difficulty. Is that right?
Correct, they do not, but each question, so question 1 is going to be the easiest, and question 60 is going to be the most difficult.
Okay. So like, focused on the first few questions for that reason, or first 40 to 50 questions for that reason. Practice your math weaknesses. Study your mistakes in practice questions. Answer every question. You only have 1 minute per question, so don't be afraid to skip a question if it is taking too long. Then come back to it if you have time. When dealing with variables, plug in the answer values to see what works. And some resources to help you understand tough topics would include Khan Academy. There are a lot of YouTube channels that deal with mathematics. Some other websites too, like outside of videos, there's the Math Stack Exchange is a good one, I find. That deals a lot with advanced math topics, but I think it would probably contain a lot of the topics covered on the ACT as well.
So some math concepts that may come up during your test are going to be finding the slope, how to graph the slope, graphing parabolas and inequalities, how to find the distance between 2 points, as well as the midpoint between them, how to tell if 2 lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, labels of related angles, and how to find angles of lines that intersect. You can also potentially have formulas for properties of circles, triangles, squares, rectangles, trapezoids, and parallelograms. You can also deal with topics such as reflection, rotation, translation, and dilation of certain points and images on a graph. You can also potentially have trigonometric functions, scientific notation, ratios, proportions, and percentages, linear equations, absolute value, probability, mean, median, range, and mode, exponents and roots, substitution and elimination for 2 equations and 2 unknowns, factoring quadratic equations, the quadratic formula, sequences, and complex numbers. Again, I know that sounds like a lot, but a lot of these concepts you've already had in your math classes, so just refer back to those old notes, old quizzes, old tests. Those are also going to be great resources.
Regarding calculators, they're only allowed on the math section. It can be any 4-function graphing or scientific calculator, not on the prohibited list. And the prohibited list will be covered in later slides. We will cover that in later slides. You should use a calculator that you are familiar with, because that will allow you to be more efficient. Sometimes different kinds of calculators have different settings for certain kinds of calculations, so you could even get a different result from what you're expecting if you're using a calculator that you don't know very well. As a last resort, all problems can be solved without a calculator. And if you have accommodations such as Braille or speaking calculators, they need to be approved prior to the test day. In the event of online testing, a calculator will be built into the online testing program, and you will likely receive additional information in this special case.
All right, so the reading test. This is 40 questions in 35 minutes. There are 3 single passages and 1 paired passage. That paired passage means that it is 2 shorter passages where you will compare ideas between the 2. So you can have passage types such as humanities, social studies, natural science, and literary fiction. Types of questions you might encounter are main idea questions, detail, vocabulary, function and development of the passage as a whole, and implied ideas within the passage. So some reading general tips that you might come across.
Sorry, I was muted.
You're no worries. Continue, David.
Sorry. Do you want me to continue?
Continue.
Okay. Some general tips for reading. Start with the passage with which you're most comfortable. Skim it first. Try to be interested in the material. That is to say, try to, not just look at the words, try and think about what they're saying. Put a keyword beside each paragraph to help yourself keep in mind the main idea as you read, or make it concrete for yourself. The most important rule is that all answers can be found in the text. You don't have, if it's an economics text, you're not expected to already know things about economics in order to be able to answer the questions, for example.
So our last section, just about the last section. So the science format is the last section of the 4 main sections. Again, there's that potential writing one. There are 40 questions in 35 minutes. There are 7 passages total, and there are 3 types of passages you will come across. You will have 3 data representation passages, which comprise approximately 15 of the questions. You'll have 3 research summary passages, which are about 18 questions in total. You'll finally have 1 conflicting viewpoints passage, which is about 7 questions, and that's going to be showing kind of like the reading section, where it's going to be 2 shorter passages showing 2 different opinions where you'll have to compare the 2. So there's no particular order of passages in this section, and there's no particular order of difficulty as well.
The science section tests your understanding of scientific data. Passages may be about earth science, chemistry, biology, or physics. Prior knowledge helps, but again, as before, it is not required. Studying science material is mostly useless for the test because all you need is in the passages. The key to doing better is practicing sample ACT science sections. For data representation and research summaries, the best strategies are to read the charts, understand the data, process and use the data, or compare the data. I say strategies. These are really the types of questions that are asked: reading the charts, understanding the data, processing and using the data, and comparing the data. For conflicting viewpoints, you might be asked to, or you will be asked to comprehend, evaluate, and compare the viewpoints.
So important tips to take away from the ACT. Answer every question. There is no penalty for a wrong answer. Budget your time for each question. If a question is taking too long, skip it. Come back to it if you have time. And also use the process of elimination to eliminate those answers that you know are wrong. Again, also please make sure to focus on your time management. When that prompter calls out 5 minutes left, make sure that you are filling in those unfilled in bubbles, and then you can go back to those questions with the remaining few minutes and change an answer if you need to, but make sure every question is answered. I can't stress that enough.
So some helpful online resources. There's an there are ACT practice. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what all of these are. So that first one, is it ACT practice questions published by Auburn or
Yes.
hosted by Auburn? Okay. Then there is a guide to English on the ACT, also hosted by Auburn. I'm sorry, it's probably better if you read this one because I'm not familiar with many of these links.
That's okay. Perfect. But yeah, Daniel had the first two right. These are 4 of these sources are straight from Auburn University's website. We pour out our resources into the community and we want all high schoolers to do their best. You know, it'd be nice if you guys came to Auburn, but we're not forcing you to, of course. But we are using these resources and giving of our time and our energy to help everyone succeed regardless of where you end up in life. Again, there's the www.act.org website. Again, that's a great one. That's going to give you all the information you could need to know about the ACT from the source itself. And then there's also a math.lamar.edu, has a great set of resources for these like math problems that might be somewhat difficult. So that concludes our slides. I definitely just want to make sure that you guys understand that we are here for you as Auburn students. We want you guys to succeed in everything you do, and a great way to succeed is a good ACT score. That gets you in the door to these universities, and then that will help you, get to wherever you want to be, whether it's engineer, doctor, teacher, lawyer, whatever you want to be. We really want to help you succeed, and so do Miss Hannah and Miss Marshall, and I'm sure they're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you both so much. That was fantastic. I don't know that I've ever seen a more comprehensive or specific presentation about the ACT and how to prepare for it. So one of the biggest things that I thought you said was, if you run out of time, make sure you answer every question. So if that happens, and I think it does happen to most people, do you think that they should specifically bubble in the same answer for every question? Answer B for every single one of them, or C, or just kind of, make a diagram, make a picture.
I've definitely heard of students doing a little bit of everything. My friend drew a Christmas tree on her remaining ones, and she did pretty well. Again, I would recommend doing one letter the whole way through. Obviously, try to choose B or C because those middling answers tend to get used a lot as a correct answer. So definitely choose B or C. Stick with it. You can change up between sections, but definitely stick with that one answer. And again, it's not the end of the world if you do not finish. It is okay. It really is. You're doing your best. You're out here doing your best. So don't freak when you hear that 5 minutes left and you still have 10 questions left. Just go ahead and fill in B or C, and then you can continue as before. And if you realize, hey, number 32, I marked in C, but let me go change, let me look at it. Okay, I think the answer is A. You could change your answer then. But that way you always have an answer marked for every question.
Another thing to keep in mind is that the answers that are something like none of the above or all of the above, or don't change or remove the, just the kind of answers that seem like cop-out answers actually tends to have an outsized share of the correct answers. So like if you're really hurrying and you don't have time to read the questions at all, those are maybe the safest choices. That's interesting about the B and C being more commonly selected. That is something I had not heard before. I thought it was aside from the other thing, I thought it was random.
No, there's definitely kind of a psychology to it if you focus on tests and like just like testing college, a lot of people and organizations are going to choose those middle answers because it's going to be like hiding the answer between two or three wrong answers. So that's
Hmm.
kind of the psychology behind it. So definitely B or C is the way to go. Obviously, I'm not saying all the answers are going to be B or C, but if you have to choose one letter and stick with it, choose B or C because statistically it will be a higher probability that you will get those right.
Yep. Yep. I think that's true. Okay, so I'd like to just read a couple of statements, just things that I hear from students or just from people in general about the ACT, and just see if you all have an opinion about it or if you know anything. Okay, so the first one is some ACT tests are easier or harder based on when you take them. Any thoughts?
So there's definitely obviously the ACT organization tries its hardest to make, each year's test all the similar difficulty. However, when they get the score distribution from that certain test taken across the nation, there's a good chance that some people might perform better on a March test versus the February test, just due to the different nature of questions and just the different population of students that might be taking it. Again, this is all random. So, what they're going to try to do is when they're providing your score, they're going to try to scale, they provide the scores on a bell curve. So, they're going to try to scale that bell curve to where each test is scored similarly. So if you do not as well on a harder ACT test for that month, for that year, whatever, then they're going to inflate your score just minorly, maybe 1 point, maybe half a point, to make sure that those tests are evenly judged. So, yes, there might be some very minor difference in difficulty, but your score is not going to reflect that. It's going to reflect an even score across the board.
Just building on what Chloe said, I don't remember exactly what the ACT does. I know that the ACT does report a numerical score that would be affected by, I guess, difficulty, but they also report percentiles, which, if the test is more difficult for everyone, that shifts the whole distribution downward. So percentiles would not, in principle, not be affected by that. I say in principle because in practice, it might be a little bit different.
Okay, great. Tell me what you all think about. I tell students that the future is uncertain right now because we know that this past year, Auburn University did not require an ACT score for admission. I believe I've heard that next year they plan to have the same format, but then from there, we don't know. We'll see. What would you say to a student who thinks that ACT scores don't matter anymore because colleges may not, we may never go back to taking ACT scores? What other purpose would there be?
I understand that there's a lot of talk currently with like social psychologists and education reform activists who believe that the ACT and SAT and other standardized tests are technically an outdated of measuring academic intelligence. I will say I'm not going to say whether I agree with that or not, but I will say regardless, I think it's a great idea to take it. Just because a Auburn might not be accepting it on a year-to-year basis or might not be requiring it on a year-to-year basis, doesn't mean that another school that you're applying to won't. So just because, Auburn says, hey, we don't need you to submit this year, what if you're applying to another school in state or out of state regardless, and they're like, oh, we kind of need that score. So you don't want to count yourself out from those other opportunities by just limiting yourself to what Auburn says. So definitely take it. I know there are some monetary issues with that again, but there are free assistants, and I know Auburn High School provides at least one free ACT test per year. So there's nothing hindering you from taking it at least once. So definitely make use of those resources because it really can't hurt. It takes, maybe 3 to 4, 4 to 5 hours out of one day of your life. Like it's not it's not gonna, it's not gonna kill you to take it.
It sure does matter too for scholarships. And
Of
so
course, scholarships,
a
yes.
lot of times, even if you don't have to have it for admission into a college, you certainly can utilize it when you start applying for scholarships and
Yes,
have to
it can
have
only
it in
help
most
you.
cases.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it really can. It can only help you. So why not? Why not just add it, bolster that resume a little bit more with your ACT score, show that you are making an effort.
Right.
Furthermore, furthermore, at least it was this way when I was in high school. I don't know if it's this way now. I think that your geographic preference for where you want to go to school might affect which standardized tests you take. I think that schools in the Southeast tend to emphasize the ACT more than other standardized tests. So if you want to go to school somewhere, if you want to go to a university somewhere in the Southeast, then taking the ACT, I think, is recommended, in particular, whether they require it or not. And more to the point, I think, even if you're not necessarily planning to, it's a good way to keep your options open if you do take it.
Yes.
Absolutely. So do you think that high GPA in high school translates to a high ACT score?
Not necessarily. So, there's obviously some people are just natural born test takers, and I do believe in a dynamic academic mentality, meaning that your hard work and ethic can affect your, intelligence. So I'm not going to limit people by saying that some people are better test takers than others, and that's just how it is. Some people need a little more practice and a little more preparation for the ACT, but everyone is capable of getting that perfect score of 36. I definitely think that there might be some correlation to study habits and information retention from your high school classes. If you get good grades in your science classes or whatever, your math classes, there might be a lesser need for you to prepare as much for those sections on the ACT. But again, is preparation going to kill you? So like, I don't want to limit anyone by saying they aren't gonna, they automatically aren't gonna do well. If they didn't do so well in geometry, that's okay. Like we can work through that. We can use these resources, or you can do it on your free time, and you can, minimize those weaknesses there. But yes, I think definitely there, might be some slight correlation, but also, everyone needs to prepare for it, and everyone can benefit, and nobody is limited.
Right.
I think it should be thought of in terms of skill sets, like the skill set for classes and the skill set for standardized tests like the ACT overlap certainly, but not perfectly. I, without going into too much detail, I knew people who didn't make very good grades in high school, but they aced the ACT. And I knew some people who were the opposite case. So again, being a good student does not always translate to being a good test taker. I don't think that, you're a born test taker or anything with, like Chloe said, it's not something that's determined by fate, but they are skill sets that you have to develop differently, and that is not always something that is emphasized. Maybe.
Love it. Okay, listen, you two, now you may not remember this, since it's been a little while since you took the exam. But when you register for the ACT, you can, there's a place where you can put in the schools where you would like to have your scores sent. So it always seems like that's putting the cart before the horse to me, because I would worry about what if my score is not the score that I want? and yet it's free. You can put in 4 schools and say, I want to send these the test scores to Auburn and wherever else, and those are free. But should you do that if you are not 100% sure that your test score is the one that you want to submit? Do you remember
So
anything about that?
I do. So because those 4 options are free, obviously especially for those students who are, limited by money, because after you take the ACT, you have the option to submit your score to other schools. You can submit, I can't remember, but I think it's like $5 to $10 to $15 per school. I might be wrong, but fact check me on that later on the www.act.org website. But you can submit your scores to each school for a small fee. But again, because some people are constrained monetarily, this is a good option for those top 4 schools that you're planning to apply to. You might be planning to apply to more, to less. I get that. But your top 4 schools, definitely put them down, because mark them down. So if you don't do well on that certain ACT test, I have a feeling you're going to want to take it again if you can. So, you can choose, on your next ACT test, hey, I want to make a better score. I'm going to try to prepare more, make a better score. I'm going to go ahead and put these same 4 colleges down, because they're not going to take your lowest ACT score. They're going to want to see the best version of you. So they're going to want to see that highest ACT score. So if you get a 22 on your first one, but if you jump up to a 25 on your next one, they're going to throw away that 22, be like, okay, no, this is the Chloe that we want to see. This is the student that, she's working hard and working to better herself, and so this is where she's at right now. So they're going to throw away that, that lower first score. So it really can't hurt you, because what if you put no schools down, you realize it was an amazing score, and now you have to pay to send it to those schools, and now you're out more money. Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to spend more money, whether they can or can't spend that money. So it really can't hurt you. No school is going to look at you at your first ACT score and say, ooh, but she got this on this one, even though she got this on this one. No, they're going to throw that one away. So really can't hurt you to put it down.
And I would guess maybe that even if your score, even if you only have a chance to take the ACT once and your score isn't very good, maybe admissions committees would think differently than I about this, but I would be inclined to say sending in a 20, which is kind of a mid-link grade, I think, on the ACT. Is that right?
It depends on the student.
I guess so. Anyway, sending in a grade that isn't very good is better than sending in nothing. If you send in nothing, then they're only left to wonder, well, how bad was it that they weren't willing to show it to us? So I think probably sending it is to someone is the thing to do, regardless of how good it is. But definitely try to take it more than once if you can. I don't know. I say these things. I think Chloe is in education. Is that right?
I'm not, but I've had a lot of experience with the ACT through my process, through leading this volunteer organization, and through my younger siblings who are coming up through the high school system in South Carolina and are going through the same process now. So I do have a lot of experience with it. And so, yeah, I would, just from personal experience, say the risks of not sending your ACT score into anyone are so much greater than the rewards. Okay, so like basically, you want to send it in. Yeah, because you'd obviously rather send it in, even if it's not your happiest score, because at least they'll have something. Because, Auburn might be a test score optional, but another college you might be applying to might not be. So you want to have at least all aspects of that application.
And then just saying that all the students do have an opportunity to take it in the 11th grade, and sometimes our plans don't always. We're maybe thinking that we're going to go to that 4-year school, and just the fact of taking that and you're going to a junior college, it could exempt you out. Your score could, of taking a remedial class. So
Yeah.
that would be very helpful too.
Yeah, I know Auburn does that too. Auburn, because I got a certain score on one of my sections, I got out of taking a certain English class at Auburn. And that's, classes cost money, time is money. I don't want to have to pay for a class that I can test out of because of a certain score. So, if, especially since I want to save money, potentially get out a semester early, depending on my plans. I'm not, but maybe you guys are. But just because I have too many classes I still have to take. But, if you're looking to get out early to save money, to start going into the workforce early, definitely try to test out of those classes. The ACT, like Miss Marshall said, like it can't hurt you.
If I could say one thing too, because this has been a really great session, just talking about some of the different tips, and we certainly do appreciate it for our students. But one of the things as a proctor, I've noticed kids just don't write on the booklet. And one of the things that you all were saying that you could mark on that booklet, eliminate some of the things that aren't right. It just makes things so much quicker. They don't take the time to do those things, those little things that you were talking about there. And please, y'all, bring a calculator. I know if you can, because it hurts the proctor's heart too when you're sitting there. Like you said, you can take it without it, but don't forget that calculator.
Because
I don't think it's bad to even think about an extra set of batteries. I'm an ultra planner, but just in case, they die in the middle of the exam, I'd rather pop in some batteries.
And I've seen kids rock up in there with 2 calculators if they have, the backup calculator, because inevitably, something could happen. That.
I do that. I sometimes bring 2. I remember I brought 2 calculators, at least one of them, and I have a calculator that I have to charge. So again, it's the same thing. If you need to charge your calculator, make sure it is charged the night before. Test to make sure that it's plugged in. Do not get to the testing site and say, "Oh, the little guy didn't charge." Because those proctors, like, their hands are tied. They're just gonna look at you like, I'm hurt for you. But I can't help you. So definitely prepare in advance. Lack of preparation. Like I mentioned, my sister forgot to bring her calculator to hers. That only hurt her. That caused her unnecessary stress. Immediately she got into that exam already knowing she was going to have to retake it to get that math score up. Don't do it. You don't want to waste your Saturday your Saturday morning taking a test you're going to have to retake just because you forgot something. Prepare in advance.
One other thing, I think, regarding things you should bring to the test, I would have one of these on hand. A portable pencil sharpener. Ideally, one that has a receptacle like this for the shavings. However, one thing I've learned is that you should not sharpen your pencil to an extremely fine point, because when you're taking a test that requires you to bubble in questions, it takes a long time to bubble in questions when your pencil lead has an area of 1 micron.
Daniel, I was just thinking that. I said I've seen kids with these big fat pencils. I mean, they're just huge. It was just the first time I saw one. That point, I was just thinking that before you said that.
So you don't want it to be too big, but you don't want it to be too small. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. Are you all hearing this too?
That's okay. Just continue.
A little bit.
That's all right.
Ms. Marshall, do you have any more questions?
Just the fact of plugging that Auburn High School does have, and I think Opelika does too, an ACT prep class too. In addition, and I know that Mrs. Hannah's going to be great. She always is, of sharing the resources to get in contact with you for our students at the end, and we'll make certain we've got a byline on the end of that too. But thank you all so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Like we said, we are here to help you guys. Like this is our volunteer job. We don't get paid to do this, but we love doing what we do. And I love trying to help students be the best version of themselves and learn from mistakes I made as a high school student. So any questions, ACT, anything, college prep, we are here to help you. So definitely use those links that she's going to provide. There's links to, our WebEx meetings and stuff. We want to help you. So please make use of these free resources. Again, all we require is just a little bit of your time.
Thank you again so much. We will make sure that everything in your presentation, all of your websites, everything you provided is available. And we are hosting the ACT, the national one that all juniors have to take on April the 6th. So this is very timely. So we've got some great resources to get out to our students, prior to that. But you two are fantastic, and we really appreciate your time. We know you're super busy as college students, and again, we really just appreciate everything that you do for us. And we hope that lots of our students will follow in your shoes.
I hope so. Eagle guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
I had to throw that in.
Yes.